Clifton Anderson, welcome to Something Came from Baltimore.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here with you, Tom. I hope everything is going well for you. Everybody's safe and healthy down there in Baltimore.
Are you still in New York?
Yeah, I live in New York City, yeah.
You're born and raised there. So what is New York for you? Like, how are you doing? And like, you've born and raised there, you haven't left.
Yeah, I was born and raised here, and you know, I love New York, you know, but it's changed so much, you know, in these past few years. There's so many people here, and I'm thinking about trying to make a move out of here, actually.
Wow, that you made it up until your 60s, and now you're deciding to head out.
Yeah.
A lot of people are making that decision, you know, because it's you've seen multiple turns, and I'm thinking that, let's see, you graduated graduate school in '78, so you were like in a heyday of a really cool club scene, but you had a religious background, so I'm not really sure what you participated in. You got snagged by Sonny real early, like 5 years later.
Yeah, well, you know, the extent of my religious background was really, you know, my father was a church organist. And so we would attend whatever church he had a gig at, you know. So we were raised in the Christian church. However, I participated in that for a while. It didn't really impact my life projection of my life experiences so much. So to answer your question, yeah, there was a heavy club scene going on here in New York, and the music scene was totally different. It was a kind of a scene where a young musician could get involved in this music any number of ways. There were a lot of opportunities to just be around the music and to be around a lot of great musicians, and it was just a very different scene. It was very, very, very inspiring. Very, you know, you could walk into a club if they knew that you were a musician. They didn't hassle you about paying anything. They just, you know, you just came in. You know, it was like a very, very different scene. The clubs were more about the music in those days and the musicians.
You've been in the club scenes, you know what they're like, and you've toured with Sonny, and it's just he's like a rock star of jazz musicians. So you saw a different affection for him than you would see if you would go into like a club scene, and you've seen both ways.
Yeah, I've been fortunate in that I've experienced the very bottom of the dregs of this business and the top creme of the creme, you know. So it's given me a wide perspective, really. Yeah.
You know, you're forcing me to ask me to give me an example of a drag situation. Give me an example of a drag scenario.
Well, going to play for the door somewhere, you know, in a little club restaurant, you know, where people aren't paying attention to the music, or really, you know, that kind of a situation is not really, you know, fortunately I didn't do too many of those, but I have experienced them, you know.
I saw you live at the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia, September 25th, 2009.
Oh.
Sonny was 79. He just turned 79. Yeah. So when he came out, it was almost like a Michael Jackson concert. He hit, he danced on one leg and hopped out like he was fit, and I was like, you know, the admiration and the love that was in that audience. You know, it's different than that club scene that you're talking about, but you know, there's probably times that he was like, I'm tired, I'm just gonna fake it today, and people are still gonna gush and love him to the nth degree.
Well, you know, Sonny, he's the type of musician, he could do that, but he never did that. I mean, every time we hit the stage, it was take no prisoners. You had to play, you had to really bring everything. He would be very dissatisfied on some shows where everybody was just doing the best they could, and it didn't achieve what he wanted to achieve. And you know, even though the audience was going crazy, you know, people going nuts, you know, he would go in and slam the door of the dressing room and really, you know, in that kind of situation. But I learned a lot from the years that I spent with him, you know, on so many different levels. You know, I was just like a sponge when I got with him. I just wanted to absorb as much as I could, because there's so many different things with somebody like him. He represents aspect of this music that you cannot find. I mean, there are very few people walking around, especially right now. There's just a handful maybe, but even back then, there weren't that many that had his type of life experiences, understood the business, understood the music. I mean, I would watch him perform and I could see how he would just wrap the audience around his pinky. You know, there's certain things about just performance that I was able to learn from him, as well as the music, you know, and how he carried himself as a leader, band leader, you know, how he dealt with business situations with other guys in the band. You know, not everything was always pleasant, you know. So I learned a lot from being around him, you know, and absorbing, just being that sponge and picking up everything that I could, you know.
Mm. You know, I was thinking in my head of, like, I consider him like a rock star jazz artist, and there aren't anymore. And I was thinking right around that time, like I could see like Clark Terry, maybe McCoy Tyner, Ornette Coleman, and Herbie Hancock. And I don't think there's any more people, you know, during that time period, the 90s to the 2000s, that were shaking people, you know, and had that body of work.
Right. Yeah, I was fortunate to work with McCoy too.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, you did.
So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know, it's weird. Like, I was doing research for you, and I wanted to look up McCoy Tyner, and I didn't know he died last year around March. This COVID thing, you don't have enough time to, you know, really take a deep breath and say, oh, these people have passed. We can't take a breath here and celebrate these people. We have to keep on chugging along.
Right. Yeah, I know it's difficult. Jimmy Heath too. Jimmy Heath passed. We weren't able to celebrate Jimmy Heath.
I'm going to edit this a little. And we did talk about Sonny, but you have a song called Sonny Says.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to play a selection of that. Do you have any more that you want to talk about that song?
Well, basically, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Sonny is full of pearls. So you just have to catch those pearls when he drops them, when he says them. The song is just really a tribute to him and to what he's meant to me, you know, what he's been to my development, not just as a musician, but as a human being, you know, as my uncle, as somebody who has contributed so much to the music and is striving to always improve himself, you know. So he's given me that kind of seed also.
Now, he's a Virgo, so I'm assuming that he believes everything that he says is, if people would just listen to him, he could solve all world problems.
Virgos, right?
Yeah, Virgos, and that he's very organized.
Yes.
But he can throw a good party too, you know.
Yeah, all those things. That's right.
Yeah. You must have bumped into either Dionne Warwick or Luther Vandross, or both.
Well, I never worked with Luther. My percussionist has played with Luther. He used to work with Luther, among others. And Dionne Warwick, I did a couple concerts for Dionne Warwick back, that was a long time ago. I would say maybe the late 70s, early 80s, very early 80s. She did a few shows here in New York, and I worked with her there.
I'm forcing you to tell me, which version do you prefer, the Dionne Warwick version of A House Is Not a Home or the Luther Vandross?
Oh boy,
I know it's rough, isn't it?
Yeah, they're very different, you know. And when I approached doing that song, I realized, I said, you know, well, most people today know the Luther Vandross version because it was more current, you know. It's hard to say. They're both very different. They both have their pluses, you know. So I wouldn't say one is better than the other, or I like one better than the other. I think they're both good, and they both achieved what they needed to achieve at the time that they did them. Luther is, of course, his is very more emotional, I think, and you know, Dionne's was more pop oriented, and it served the period that she did it in, you know.
Yeah, 1964.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, here I got into a rabbit hole. So this song was the A side, and it only hit 71 on the pop charts. I'm sure it did better in the soul charts.
Wow.
But the B side was "You'll Never Get to Heaven If You Break My Heart," which hit top 40. How about that for an A B combo?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah,
that's interesting. There's a piece of trivia I didn't know.
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to tell you my thing. I love Luther and I love Dionne, and I love Never Too Much album. I think it's fantastic. The Dionne Warwick though, like I still play her on Spotify on a regular. I can't stop. Luther, I like some of his stuff, but I can't do a full album, and that's just my preference. It gets a little too syrupy in the 80s, but I can do Dionne 24/7. I saw her in QVC, and we're not allowed to fawn over people, and there's two people I fawned over, which was George Foreman and Dionne Warwick. I looked at her, and she was so tight and put together and friendly and down home, and I said, I know I'm not allowed to talk to you, but you look great. Like, you look great.
She's a very sweet person, you know.
Yeah,
I like her a lot as a human being. She's a very nice person.
yeah, definitely. All right, so we're going to sideline a little, and let's talk about your fashion. I've been looking at your pictures. You have a really nice fashion sense, and I don't know if someone's dressing you or you dress yourself.
These are interesting questions. Really, I dress myself, you know. I dress myself. I've always been interested in clothes and looking a certain kind of way. Of course, that's another thing that I have a lot. I've been impressed with by Sonny also. When I first joined the band, I had to really try to step it up because he would come on stage wearing some really slick stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just looking like, you know, just a regular kind of peon, you know. So, I mean, I had to step it up so I could try to, you know, come up to that level of appearance, you know. But I was always into, particularly into musicians and how musicians dressed, and you know, there always seemed to be a kind of a line between the guys who really were playing very interesting music and the way that they dressed, and the guys who played more generic kind of sounding stuff and the way they dressed. And I didn't want to be in that group. I wanted to be in the more unusual kind of, but classy.
You look very healthy, and when I see people who look healthy and they're a little older, I'm really curious if they've created some kind of health regimens or some diet programs that they use. You know, jazz was a time where, you know, if you made it to 50, you were lucky. And I think now
right.
People are a little more progressive now and realize that health is you know, the sleep and the exercise and the eating right are all kind of connected. And more jazz musicians, I think, more than any other, get it. So if you don't get it, that's fine. But I was curious.
No. I have. Well, you know, I come from an athletic background as well. You know, I had a choice to make. I was going to pursue being a professional tennis player.
Oh wow!
And so I had a very athletic kind of background. I was always like into sports and things. Of course, I drifted away from that. The deeper I got into music, the less time I had to indulge in sports and activities like that. But I did Thelonious Monk Jr. Toot, I called him Toot, but Thelonious Monk Jr., T.S. Monk as he's known these days. He and I were very good friends at one period, and he used to bodybuild. He had a pretty much a full gym in his apartment.
How cool would it have been to play professional tennis? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I love tennis, man. And it's like playing this music, actually. You know, you're there by yourself, and you have to come up with something creatively in the moment.
It's a head game. I mean, it's very physical. It's intense in the head, and you can lose a game by being in your head.
Right. And also you have to think very quickly. You know, you have to think very quickly, and you have to strategize. It's cerebral, you know. But anyway, what you were asking about was my regimen. I started, you know, I met a vegetarian woman that I was involved with for a period of time, and she got me off of meat, and you know, started me eating a certain kind of thing. certain kind of foods. And it just made me more aware of what I was putting in my body. So, I mean, I eat fish now. I don't eat any other meat. I just eat fish, and otherwise I'm vegetarian, no dairy, that kind of thing.
Good for
And,
you.
I mean, I'm not excessive. I mean, I'm not like really stringent on things. I drink, I like wine, so I'll drink some wine, and things like that. But, and I try to exercise as much as I can. During this pandemic, I put on a couple pounds, so I gotta work on getting rid of that. I'm very about my body, my physical well-being. I try to purge, do a purge twice a year if I can. It's very difficult. I do like a citrus purge.
Okay. Kind of like a fast, but you're using citrus.
Yeah, citrus mixed with citrus, lemon, orange, and grapefruit mixed with alkaline water.
Wow.
And I just do that for about 2 weeks, and then cleans the bloodstream. And it's not easy at first to do it, but you have to work up to it. When I first did it, the first few times I did it, I only did maybe about 2 or 3 days. Then I worked up to 5 days. And then you can go longer and longer the more you do it.
Yeah, in it, but not of it. Okay, it's what does that mean?
It means that we are here in a physical experience, but we are at our essence. We're not of this. We're not of this plane. That's not our entirety.
Mm-hmm.
We come from something that's greater than that. Our spiritual selves are the greater of the two, between a spiritual existence and a physical existence. A physical existence is more of the reflection of the spiritual existence. But people are caught up in the physical, obviously. I mean, it's very easy to be caught up in the physical because that's what we're living. We're engaged in that. There is something else. And in my life, I've been able to experience things that have led me to know that, So that's the idea behind that we're in it, but we're not of it.
You had a Christian background with your family. Did you get a metaphysical or
yeah?
Like I'm a Quaker, so yeah. So my viewpoints are pretty different.
Well, you know what? Most religions, I find, most of the major religions, it's not so much a matter of the essential things, the fundamental teachings. They're very similar to me.
I agree.
I think it's just the way you go about them that is different in the religions.
Sure.
Metaphysics. My mother got me into metaphysics, and she used to listen to this guy that came on the radio, Dr. Raymond Charles Barker, and he was every Sunday morning he would talk about the human experience in life and the greater what part of what I was talking about, spiritual existence and experience. She got me to start listening to him, and then she said, "Well, why don't we go down and go to one of his sermons down?" And he was preaching down at I think it was Alice Tully Hall, and we started going down there and going to his Sunday sermons, and it was very interesting. I found it very interesting, and so I wanted to kind of get deeper into it. And he passed away, and his successor was a guy named Dr. Stuart Grayson. And I took a few classes, metaphysics classes with Dr. Stuart Grayson. And the first thing that the first day that I came into his class, he asked the class, he says, well, how would you define something that is living? What defines life? Mm-hmm. And, we went on and on and on. Next thing he said was, we agree that life is indicated by movement, some type of movement. So everybody said, yeah. So he says, which means that there's intelligence. There has to be some form of intelligence to cause that movement. Mm-hmm. So everybody understood that. But the next thing he said, he pulled out a rock, and he put a rock up on his speaker's desk, and he says, well, would you consider this rock alive? And everybody said, no, that's not, rock is not alive. So then he said, well, I'll have you know that in this teaching, the science of mind, we know that there is movement in the rock.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it's not discernible by the human eye, by human senses. But the rock is moving. The molecules of the rock move so slowly that you cannot detect there's movement. But so he started, I mean, this whole thing kind of started blowing my mind. And then he said, well, because there's movement in the rock, then it means that there's intelligence in the rock. And so that everything that is on this, in your experience, everything that you come in contact with that you would not think as to being alive is alive. Mm-hmm. Everything has intelligence within it. And so that at that point, he kind of hooked me, and I had to go and start studying metaphysics, you know, with him. And I took it from there, you know. So that's become a part of my life practice and activity.
When you cut your lawn, there's audible noise of like pain from the grass. Like they feel that there's a soul within your yard. And that when you do cut it, you're emasculating it, you're cutting it down. Where it's not supposed to be like that, and it is screaming. I think that's weird too, or it's not weird, but interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say the weird. We got off the subject, so don't have Clifton Anderson. Don't get me there. You know, it's funny because when I do the promo for this, like the intro for this album, I call this a classic album. It is something that you can wedge into your classic vinyl that you have, and you wouldn't know the difference. And it's not that it's dated, and it's not that it's kitschy, where it's relying on old styles. It just has that classic vibe. And it's,
you know, I've heard, you're not the first person that said that's. A lot of people have been saying that about this recording, which is very, you know, is loving to my ears, you know.
Yeah. Well, I thought you did that on purpose, and I was like, oh, this must be a cause and effect to the COVID thing. But then I realized you were kind of working on it before.
Right.
But you know, you just want to feel warm, and you want to feel welcome, and you want to feel comfortable. And we have so much, you know, stress in our world, that I was like, oh, this could be a throwback to, like, look, you know, I could come out with a political statement, or I could come out with something really crazy, but I'm going to give you a classic sounds, things that are going to be very welcoming to your ears. But then again, that you do have been down this road before, where you wrote it first and then added some lyrics to it. And I saw the video today, and Andy Bay, we got to tell him to shave. But I never saw him like that before.
Well, he's been locked down, you know.
Yeah, no, he has every right. Trust me, we all been there. But heard somebody say they didn't like the way some people look or pray. Stand your ground, ask questions later. It's a hard-hitting song.
Yeah.
And how does it develop? How did you come about that whole song?
Well, you know, we used to play that song. When I first wrote the music, we used to play it with my group as an instrumental, as like kind of a medium swinging instrumental. And it started to evolve. I just started hearing that line, been down this road before. I just heard that with it. I said, well, you know, this is applying to what's going on. This is around 2013, after Trayvon Martin was murdered. You know, I realized that been down this road before is something that Black people in this country would understand, relate to, because it's such a thing. It's like such a repetitive thing that we're going through, particularly with the police killing so many Black people, you know, with you know, really in an unwarranted way, and not being held accountable in any kind of way. So I said, you know, I gotta put some lyrics to it. You know, by the next year, there was a whole succession of murders that took place. It was like almost like one after the other that got into the news. And I wanted to take the song and couch it in a place where it would be more accessible to a wider group of people. So I said, you know, I want to make this, I have to turn this into maybe a song with vocal, and then change the rhythm of it a little bit, so that it would appeal to a wider group of people, to try to get the message across, you know, that they would listen to it and maybe, you know, would spur them on to think about things a little more.
It's funny, this year I'm doing a lot of interviews, and I'm really disappointed in the music community for not being, you know, not being aggressive with protest music, and
Yeah,
more or
me
less,
too.
because we were raised on that, like in the
Yeah,
60s, and
yeah.
the Stax catalog is just filled with stuff, the 70s, and
Hmm.
then you get to something that's really crazy, and you have the ability to reach out to people. It seems like the jazz community was, you know, the only community that's willing to put their thoughts out there, and
Well,
you
you
know.
know, originally it was jazz musicians who were the activists. You
Mhm.
know, originally, of course, as you're saying, you know, in the '60s, you had '60s, early '70s, you had artists, pop artists, that were willing to take that step forward and make a statement with their music about the current affairs that were going on.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I feel like there's a real deficit in the type of music that musicians are making based on everything that's going on right now. I would think that there would be more, you know, more statements, musical statements about things. But I could be wrong. Maybe there are, and they're just not being heard. You know.
Mhm. I think you're with me. I don't listen to regular radio anymore. It's not connecting to me on an emotional basis anymore.
Mhm.
So if they're doing it, I doubt it. What I'm hearing, it doesn't seem like it is. But
Yeah.
um, it's funny that, you know, you've been down this road before, and we can get that rabbit hole big time. But here, the people from Georgia who are begging for um, their fair share, the police to protect them, and to have democracy,
Mhm.
and are fighting for their rights, turn around and save democracy, only to know that chances are nothing's going to get better. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
they saved our ass, and we really haven't done shit for them. You know, that kind of thing. And but they realize that, you know, we'll try this again, and we'll hopefully that there'll be some politicians out there that will be willing to look at people and how they live, and improve their life.
Mm-hmm.
So, well,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I mean, it'll affect everybody in the country. It'll lift all boats. You
yeah.
know, you know. That's a yeah. You know, I don't know if we want to go get too deep into that, because that's
Now already,
another conversation.
I got two more songs. We normally play five, but I couldn't stop. The TUBC, and I'm not sure what that means, but I really like that song.
Yeah,
What's TU?
that's my homage to my dear friend who's no longer with us, Bob Cranshaw, the great Bob Cranshaw.
Mm,
You know, bassist and humanitarian, I should say. You know, Bob had a lot of influence on me. Was very impactful in my life, and kind of guided me in the business, in the music business, to some degree. You know, not just in Sonny's situation, but you know, here in New York as a musician, working musician, uh, in situations and you know certain aspects of the business. He was always, and as a friend, you know, we've traveled around the world. I don't know, maybe 30 times, you know, and I was very, you know, we were just very close. We had a great relationship. He was like he was like a father and a big brother, actually, and like one of my best friends, all wrapped up in one, you know. And so I just want to write a piece for him that celebrated him, that I felt would celebrate him well. Big, you know, like a big sounding, happy sounding uh, music. You know, we have the two bells on there and things. So TUBC, that stands for Thank You, Bob Cranshaw.
it's awesome. We're gonna listen to that. We have the last song on the album is "Until We Meet Again."
Yes.
It's a fun song, but how do you get the whistles? Is that computerized?
No. We just whistled.
Oh, how many layers of whistling was that?
I think that was Victor CN, the percussionist who's on the record, and myself, and I think we did like just a one overdub track of it. So we just maybe 2 tracks of whistles.
Love it. I think it's great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's a great way to end the album. I think so.
Yeah.
All right, we're right at that, almost 3:40. I have 2 minutes left. So I really appreciate you talking to me today. And Clifton Anderson, the album is called Been Down This Road Before. It's on the Rope-A-Dope Records. And I thank you so much for talking to me today on Something Came from Baltimore.
Oh, Tom, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And I wish you the best as we're moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And your listeners.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
It's very interesting questions, man. I appreciate it. You know, it wasn't the normal round of you know.
Well,